So first things first, we're going to measure my waist to get the waist and hip ratio. So we're going to put this tape measure at my belly button and wrap this tape around. I'm at 29 inches. And now we're going to measure my hips. So it's supposed to be the widest part of your body. Which is at 42 inches. So in order to get the waist to hip ratio, we have to divide the waist, the measure of the waist divided by the measure of the hips. So my waist measurement was 29 divided by 42 equals 0.69. That's the waist to hip ratio, and that is determined to have a pear shape figure. This is the anatomical position. So we gotta make sure our body is forward, palms forward, and our feet is flat and forward as well. The chin is superior to the navel. So the chin superior to the navel. The next one is inferior. The navel is inferior to the chin. The next one is anterior. The navel is anterior to the spine. Alright, the next one is posterior. The spine is posterior to the breastbone. The next one is medial. The nose is medial to the eye. The next one is lateral. The nipple is lateral to the breastbone. The next one is proximal. The elbow is proximal to the wrist. The next one is distal. The wrist is distal to the elbow. The next one is superficial. The ribs are superficial to the heart. The next one is deep. The tongue is deep to the face. The next thing we're going to talk about is planes. The first one is sagittal plane. Sagittal plane is cut vertically in half where it makes right and left portions. The next plane is frontal plane. Frontal plane runs vertically in half from anterior, which is the front, and posterior, which is the back. The next one is transverse plane. It runs parallel to the ground, dividing the body into superior and inferior portions.
Okay.
Now the next one we're going to do is mediolateral axis. The next one is anterior-posterior motion. The next one is superior-inferior axis. The next one we're going to do is center of mass. The next thing we're going to talk about is the motions of the sagittal plane. Putting my head down is flexing. Putting my head back up is extension. And putting my head back more is hyperextension. Putting my foot to the left is thoracic flexing. Putting my foot to the right is plantar flexing. The next thing we're going to talk about is the motions of the frontal plane. This is abduction. This is adduction. The next one is elevation, depression. Next one is eversion, inversion. And next one is deviation, lateral flexing. The next thing we're going to talk about is motions of the transverse plane. Rotation to the left, rotation to the right. Internal rotation, external rotation. Protraction, retraction. Pronation, supination. Next one we're going to talk about is motions in multiple planes. This is circumduction. This is pronation of the ankle, supination of the ankle. The next thing we're going to talk about is close skill. A close skill is where there's no distraction. We're going to give basketball an example. Pretend I have a basketball and I'm at the free throw line, and I can take my time, look at the net, and shoot. The next one we're going to talk about is open skill. I'm going to use basketball as an example again. Pretend I'm dribbling the ball and I'm running down the court and I'm trying to make a layup, but another player is trying to come and block my shot. I gotta make the adjustment in order to make that layup. Now we're gonna do the differences in motion and translation. First one is rectilinear translation, which is walking in a straight line. The next one is curvilinear translation, which is walking in an S shape. The next one is rotation. And then the last one is general motion, which you're walking all over the place. The next one we're going to talk about is the 3 skills. The first one is discrete skill, which is a well-briefed, defined action that have a clear beginning and end. An example of that would be snapping my fingers. The next one is continuous skill. It may last for many hours or minutes, and it is carried out in such a way that you don't know there is beginning or end. And an example of that would be running. Next one is serial skill. Serial skill is where it involves 2 or more discrete skills linked together in a predefined sequence. For example, would be dribbling a basketball. Which I know I don't have a basketball in my hand, but yeah. The next thing we're going to talk about is the simple and complex kinetic chain. The simple kinetic chain is just my elbow and arm. The next one is the complex kinetic chain, where I'm using all my hips and shoulders and vertebrae. Next one we're going to talk about is closed and open kinetic chain. An example of a closed kinetic chain will be squats. When doing squats, my feet presses against the floor to raise my body up. The next example would be open kinetic chain. I don't have a leg curler machine right now, but imagine it's a leg curler machine. On the leg curler machine, I put my legs up and down. My legs are swinging freely. That's an example of open kinetic chain.